Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, we are broadcasting from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful but wet Alpharetta. Folks, if you are tired of the mega bank experience, if you're at one of those banks, you know what I'm talking about, and you'd like a bank that can deal with you in a personal way, but they're also big enough to handle the needs that you have as a business. Well, I think Renaissance fits that kind of magic combination, if you will, and I know that from working with them myself and the clients that I work with. So if you're looking for a better banking experience for your business, go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. I think you'll be glad you did. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Greg Silberman. Greg is with S.J. Gorowitz and Company. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, John. Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's talk about you and your firm. How are you serving folks out there?
Yeah, John. So we're a CPA firm, generalized CPA firm. Our clientele is pretty much high net worth individuals, so high income earners or business owners. Mm-hmm. And so we really focused on the tax planning side of things for our clients. We also do bookkeeping and CFO services. But essentially, everyone comes to their CPA, they want to save money on taxes. And so we're doing a lot of research around different tax planning structures, retirement structures, and essentially that's where we feel that we can be most impactful with clients is on the tax planning side. But in many instances, clients come to us with books, financials that are just in complete shambles, and we have the staff that can pick that up and kind of make sense of that as well. And I think clients are quite appreciative of that kind of service.
Yeah, they find out that you can really do a lot better job if those books are in order, right?
Yeah, they certainly don't like to pay the fees sometimes, mm-hmm. but it is definitely worthwhile because when it comes to your taxes, if they're ever looked into by the IRS or the state, you need to have a good support system behind that, and that's what good bookkeeping does for you. It creates good support. Right,
for sure. Talk about your journey prior to S.J. Gorowitz. I mean, talk about what's led you to be running your firm here.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
So I always like to begin by saying that I am from the South.
Southern England, right?
But that is the deep, deep South, and that would be South Africa.
South Africa, okay.
I'm originally
you really are from the South.
Deep South,
okay.
Yeah. Can't get further south.
Gotcha.
Maybe the Antarctic, actually. But anyway, so I grew up in Johannesburg,
okay,
where I became a chartered accountant, which is the English version of a CPA.
Got it.
And I worked with Grant Thornton for many years in public auditing. And I proceeded to move around the world. I lived in England for a number of years, and then got to Atlanta about 22 years ago, I would say, mm-hmm. and became a CPA through reciprocity and really followed the career path of working within a banking or wealth management environment, so kind of the in-house CPA, if you will, where I would help clients do tax planning. Mm-hmm. And many of those companies I worked for had ownership stakes, as in private equity stakes, in lower middle market companies.
Right.
And so I would literally parachute in, and help out on, high level strategy, CFO type work. And so I did that for many, many years at different employers, and eventually decided to strike out on my own, built up my own practice from literally my home office, back at home as we went through COVID. Mm-hmm. And then my existing clients in my practice said, Greg, love what you're doing at the high level strategy point of view, but can you just help us file our taxes, and can you help us with bookkeeping? I didn't have the resources for that. And I thought to myself, well, maybe this is a good entree to look at an existing stand-up firm, maybe look at some M&A, mm-hmm. personal, and get involved there, and also, find an existing firm with good goodwill behind it, good clientele behind it, and then service them in the same way I was servicing my current practice.
So you came into S.J. Gorowitz then. That's you kind of merged your practice in. Is that it?
That's exactly right. Okay. So that's a short way of summarizing 2 years of my life, essentially. So
right.
It took a long time, and I'm very happy with the firm that the former owner put together and built over 30 years. It's got a strong name in the market, a lot of value add for clients. We got good referral system and good referrals from clients. So very happy so far with the transaction.
That's wonderful. Shout out to Stacy, right? Hope she's enjoying retirement.
Yeah, shout out to Stacy wherever she is. Hopefully she's on the beach.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. So let's talk a little bit about these services. Are they a la carte? Does somebody how best do you plug in with your clients in terms of this menu of services, which is quite extensive, it sounds like?
Yeah, so, we typically like to consider us more of a customized type solution as opposed to, one pick menu A, 1, 2, and 3 kind of thing. And our clientele really are of that level of wealth, of sophistication, where they do need kind of, personal services.
Sure.
In most instances, it's the taxes and tax planning and tax filing that clients really rely on. But, if they have their own businesses, we're definitely looking at their financial statements, their QuickBooks, and there's always something that we can do to help, whether we can take it off their hands entirely. Many business owners are doing their own accounting maybe at night, and we can certainly help with that. But there are elements, certainly of QuickBooks, that we understand that maybe the average user doesn't understand, and we can get transactions to flow in automatically, electronically, and so really save the owner a lot of time. Then, as I mentioned prior, in my prior / current life, I was very much a CFO for hire type position, and I would do fractional or interim or interval, whatever you want to call it, but not a full-time CFO.
Sure.
And many companies, I find, do need a little bit of help. They don't need full-time help, but they need somebody to look at the accounts, to make some suggestions. Maybe there's some IT solutions they want to put in, some governance issues, some capital structuring. Raising money is always a big deal for a lot of companies, specifically if they want to raise debt, financing from a fine bank like Renaissance, for example.
Sure.
So that's the way we kind of help, but it's all tailored to what the client needs at that specific time.
What is, Greg, the point at which or what are some of the issues that a company is having that would you think they need to pick up the phone and call you about interim CFO services? I mean, what are some of the drivers in terms of needing those services?
So, John, it's actually quite straightforward, right?
Okay.
When you're talking about smaller business, in fact, if you talk about any business, but our businesses are, revenue of at most 30 million and lower, and most of them in that $5-10 million revenue range, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As you probably are aware, for a small business owner, cash is king. Cash flow is king, right? And that's what causes those sleepless nights for many business owners. And so if you're having problems with cash flow, you're probably not looking at your business in the correct perspective, or you're not researching all the solutions that can help. And that's where I think I can I can provide the highest form of value as a CFO. It's kind of tapping those cash reserves, if I can call it that.
Yeah, yeah. Greg Silberman, folks, he is with S.J. Gorowitz and Company here in the North Fulton area. So, Greg, you've got some thoughts about what's happening with renewable energy tax credits, speaking of saving money on taxes, that are really have come to the fore in recent months here. Talk about why that's happened and what you're seeing out there.
Right. Appreciate the question, John. So I am apolitical, let's just put it that way, right? But there is clearly a movement from burning fossil fuels to burning to creating renewable energy sources, whether that's wind, solar. I'm involved in a company that it's too crazy to even mention, but they're pulling ions out of the sky. There's actually a charged particle layer in the atmosphere that you can access for electricity.
Really?
That's a discussion for another day. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But The federal government and many of the state governments have certainly embraced that as a policy, that we are now making this transition to renewable energy. And, some people will say, well, look how hot it's got outside and climate change. And I don't know if it's real or not. I'm not even going to debate that. But at the end of the day, the federal government has set policy, and they want us to move from a fossil fuel system to a renewable energy system. And so how do they do that? They create these incredible tax incentives to get people to move in that direction. Mm-hmm. Solar projects, for one, is one that I've been doing a lot of research on and looking to help some clients with, because if you can invest in any kind of solar project, you can get up to 30 or 40% of that project back in a tax credit. And a tax credit is a dollar for dollar off your tax liability. It's not like a deduction. Right? It's a dollar for dollar. And then it gets deeper than that. If you can become a solar business professional, which is actually not very hard to do, you have to do 100 hours a year, which is not a lot. And that, it's pretty lenient. You can look at webinars, you can do due diligence of projects, research, that kind of stuff. Then you can be in the business of being a solar entrepreneur. And then you get additional very, very generous deductions. And those can be applied for people who are salary W-2 wage workers. In many instances, it's difficult to do tax planning for employees, right? Your taxes are deducted every 2 weeks out of your paycheck. Mm-hmm. You do your tax return. You don't see much. Maybe you get some refund at the end of the year, but, it's kind of balances itself out. Mm-hmm. This IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, does allow relief through these renewable energy projects for W-2 earners. So that's a great benefit.
Wow.
And then, of course, business owners and businesses can make use of it as well. So it's very flexible. It's the IRA Act is, I think, from 2022, so it's really new, trying to, feel our way through it, as is the IRS. But it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to help a lot of clients and taxpayers.
And so these tax credits are available now. These options in being able to reduce taxes relative to these credits are available now.
Yes.
Okay.
The element of tax credits has been with us forever, right?
Sure.
So you've got the Georgia film credits, for example. That was very popular for a very space of time. You've got low-income housing credits. Mm-hmm. So it's just another credit in that bucket, so to speak. Yeah,
got it. And that are brand new, relatively speaking, that a lot of people don't know about. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of talk about the Georgia film tax credits too, in terms of what do we need to keep those at the same level they were before and that kind of thing, right? So, I mean, people that are concerned about that, I guess is the point, may need to look here in terms of what you're talking about, right?
Yes. So not to get off on a tangent on that, but the Georgia film tax credits were hugely successful, right? Mm-hmm. It's ended up creating this massive film industry here in Georgia, which is terrific, which again is policy in action, right? It's how the government implements policy and grows an industry or a business. Right. So kudos to them. The problem is when everyone piles on, and I'm not saying this is the case, but, it can be abused. I'm not saying that's the case, but what happens is when so many people start doing it, the Georgia Department of Revenue reacts in such a way and says, look, we used to audit some of the film tax credits to see if they were legit. You know what? I think we're going to audit all of them now.
Right.
And, of course, that you're just talking about a huge volume of work which they just can't get through, and they can't push through these credits down to the taxpayer quick enough, and that's what's happened there.
Yeah, and to your point, it's really how what I'm getting at is how new these credits are when they're newer, and the push is to incent this investment. Those have less of a likelihood of creating issues in terms of audits or right, but once they get successful, everybody wants to put on the brakes, right? Because it's too successful. The government never seems to get it quite right on this,
well,
right?
I'll say one thing, John, and it's not around state credits, but it's around federal credits, right? And I was recently at a IRS tax forum, which is a kind of an interesting thing to go to. It's put on by the IRS, right?
Okay.
And they speak about hot button issues and all sorts of things.
Right.
And in fact, they even publish this on an annual basis, but they put out their kind of 10 most egregious structures that people are using. And the most egregious or open to fraud, I'm just going to say that openly, is the Employee Retention Tax Credit, ERTC it's known as. And I won't go into great details of what it is. And, it's essentially a COVID era tax credit to say if you lost revenue but you kept your employees on, you're entitled now to a credit. But some of the stories that the IRS were relaying to us about these credits and the fraud that they've experienced is on a level beyond some things that they've seen before. It's really crazy. Now, let me just say one thing. It's not to say that the credit is not valid and legitimate. It 100% absolutely is.
Yeah.
But you've got people just abusing the system and really fraudulently abusing the system.
Well, and you've got folks that are popping up all over the place. I'm not pointing out anybody. I'm just saying that firms that are popping up that we've never heard of before that are pushing these credits that you have to wonder about the qualifications and they're again, not criticizing anybody in particular, but you want to be with somebody, I would think, when you're looking at that's got the credentials that you and your colleagues have when it comes to looking at tax credits and being bulletproof when it comes to an potential audit, right?
Yeah. So the IRS claim, and I'm taking this from memory, but I think they say they've paid out nearly $1 trillion in credits for this. That's a massive amount of money. And even if I'm overstating it, it's the billions and billions.
Right.
But a lot of these promoters, and I'm saying some of them are totally legit, and I'm not saying anything about anyone's service.
Right.
But some things that taxpayers are not aware of is when they get this employee retention credit paid to them, they have to go back and amend prior year tax returns. And in many instances, it's a business tax return where the business owner has a flow through, so the income's going to the business owner, and they have to amend their tax return. So sometimes, at the front, they're not told exactly the implications of getting the ERTC.
Right. Greg Silberman is with us, folks. S.J. Gorowitz and Company is his firm. A few more questions on the renewable energy tax credits. So these are both federal and state, or just federal?
They're mainly federal,
okay,
and they are applicable in some states. New Jersey, for example, has adopted quite a very pro-solar approach. And there are some other states as well. Not Georgia, as far as I'm aware.
Got it. Give us some examples of how you're seeing different businesses implement these credits in their business. Give folks out there some ideas about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of new, as you mentioned before, right? So it's evolving. But essentially, you've got companies like First Solar, for example, or you've got many solar project implementers, if I can call them that. And so these folks, need capital, or they will use the capital to do projects for people who want to put solar on their roof, or commercial property, or the like. And so really, it's those organizations combined with the investment from the taxpayer that create this investment vehicle, if you will. So really, one needs to find an investment vehicle, unless you want to get on your roof, John, and start, hammering in and screwing in solar panels. But that's what happens, right? So you got these industry folks who've been doing this forever and a day. They'll put together a commingled vehicle or a company which the taxpayer will invest in, and the taxpayer will derive all the credits from that investment. And all of it flows once the project is online and actually generating electricity. That's important to know.
So do you work with businesses themselves that want to make the transition to a renewable energy? Let's say they wanted to go to 100% renewable energy. Do you work with them to is that part of your service, or in terms of the financial and tax implications of that?
I mean, certainly we can help them on an advisory side for doing that, but there are other better suited advisors who will come into your business and say, this is what you need to do to your windows and to this and that to, really kind of get eco-friendly or go green on renewable energy.
Yeah, I didn't think you were installing those solar panels either, but in terms of the financial implications of that, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely, we can help with that, and solar as an energy source doesn't really support itself. The cost of solar, I think, is still quite high. Mm-hmm. So without government credits, it's not really a feasible industry. It can't compete with oil, gas, energy, diesel, as an example. So it needs to be subsidized, and that's how it occurs. Yeah,
and I can see how a lot of businesses they've got to understand the I guess the pro versus con in terms of making an investment there and what the payback on that investment is going to be and whether it's going to be worth it relative to what they're spending now on traditional energy sources. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, got it. So where should a business start? It's beyond picking up the phone and calling you and saying, hey, I want to learn more and get started. I mean, what should a business owner that is looking or somebody that wants to participate in these credits, how should they get started?
Yeah. So 99% of the time, whoever's getting started is not going to do the installations themselves and do the work themselves, right? So they need to find a provider that will provide such a service. And normally with that provider will come along some kind of financial arm of that provider will say, hey, here's the vehicle that you will invest in and we'll do this, this, and this, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to go out and find those organizations. There is a lot of them. They exist. I imagine some are good, some are not so good, some you want to do business with, some you don't. I obviously keep a list of the ones I want to do business with, right? So
there you go.
You want to come talk to me, I guess, is what you're trying to pull out of me, John.
Well, I suggested that actually on the front end, but the people that want to do more homework before they call you.
Listen,
right?
there is the World Wide Web is a phenomenal resource, and there's a lot out there. If you care to, you can go and read the Inflation Reduction Act. Not many people do. But you certainly can do your online research, and I've seen some groups that have done some great webinars actually that I've learned from. So they're out there, and I'm certainly not going to promote their name because they're competitors.
No, I get that. But you've given everyone an incentive to call you if the alternative is reading a government bill. I think everybody's got an incentive to call you for sure.
I have read the bill.
Yeah, that's right. That's what people hire you for. Let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about estate planning and talk about. Let's just talk in general terms about what some of the big issues that you're seeing with clients that you're addressing right now that you think people need to be aware of.
Yeah. So as far as estate planning is concerned, let me just be clear. We don't do estate planning. That's not really our speciality, but we'll definitely refer folks on to, more proficient people. So we know what we can do, and we know what we don't do, and we step aside from that. Mm-hmm. To answer your question, some of the hot button issues. Well, as you know, the IRS just got an $80 billion cash infusion. And I'm not sure when that money flows, but it's flowing. And we suspect that we'll see, a pickup in examinations. Mm-hmm. What I've seen is a pickup in notices. I've seen many more notices going out from the IRS to clients. And I don't know if you've ever received, you probably have, and it's probably been innocuous. But, people don't like receiving notices in the mail. And so, we're getting, I'd say that's picking up a bit. I've represented a few clients now on IRS examinations. So that seems to, I can't say if that's picking up or not. If you're concerned with an ERTC credit that you got, we don't actually do the ERTC credits, but many of our clients have done it through other providers and come back to me and say, Greg, can you help, that? So that's a hot button item. And then I think just generally, economic conditions, macro conditions, how should companies be thinking about it? how should they be planning, forward? Should they be expanding? Should they be contracting? What should they do with some of their assets? Been dealing with some clients around restructurings that, have got two businesses, for example. One's not doing so well, the other one's doing okay, but it's got a lot of real estate in it. How do they protect the one business from the other business, kind of asset protection type strategy?
Right.
And what are the tax implications, particularly of moving the assets from one entity to another?
Oh boy, that gets into some complication right there.
It sure does.
Yeah.
It can get real complicated real quick.
Right.
So speak to a professional would be my advice.
Yeah. Don't do this without a safety harness, right?
Don't try this at home, kids.
Yeah, precisely. Talk about, aren't there some changes around gift exemptions and gift exemption levels? I'm not sure if I'm asking that correctly, but.
As far as I'm aware, the gift exemption level is $17,000 in 2023. I'm not sure what it will be in 24, but essentially you can give $17,000 to anyone, to as many people as you want, without incurring any gift tax. And of course, there's no gift tax between you and your spouse. You can exchange assets all day. There's no tax effect. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but that's what I'm aware of.
Yeah, and that's the annual, but is there what about the lifetime?
Well, that's the estate tax exemption.
Okay, right.
Now you're putting me on the spot to quote the exact number. I think it's about $11.4 million. So if your estate is worth more than that, then you're going to be paying estate tax duties on your death,
right.
Essentially. Now, I will just say, just going back to the gift tax, I've been fielding quite a few questions from clients. So a lot of the clients at SJG have been with us for many years, right? And now they're all approaching retirement or entering retirement, and they're starting to go into that, I'll call it the divestation period, right? So they've been saving and investing, now you're divesting.
Right.
And a number of clients are saying to me, we're in a fortunate position. We want to start giving money to our kids. How can we do it without incurring a tax bill? My grandkid is, now 10, 11, or even younger, and I want to put money in a 5 to 9 plan to start saving for college, because we all know college is expensive and it doesn't seem to be becoming less expensive. So how do we do that in a tax-efficient manner? And so I'm fielding a lot of questions around divesting of assets as opposed to investing of assets.
Got it. Greg Silberman with S.J. Gorowitz and Company. Greg, I'd love it if you could talk first a little bit, two-part question, talk a little bit about the types of clients that are good fits for you, those that you're particularly suited for, and then maybe share a success story, one that you're particularly proud of that helps illustrate the great work you do.
Certainly. I can tell you about the unsuccessful stories. No, the success stories are harder. No, I'm just playing with you.
Yeah.
Types of clients. So our clientele that we can serve best, as I said earlier in the show, typically high net worth individuals, so making large six-figure incomes, need some help with tax planning. That's definitely where we can really help. And they can be W-2 wage employees, and in many instances, the perfect client to us has a business component as well. Why? Because we can get involved in the business. We can help with bookkeeping, CFO type services. But we can also kind of intermingle, we'll handle the business and the individual side. And so it's easier for us to determine where the money can flow, how it can flow, what should come out of the business as distributions, what should come out as salary and wages and stuff. So there's just more dough to play with in that instance.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me jumping in here, this is something that I think some people really don't appreciate the value of having all that together with an expert like you, right? Because there is so much interplay that you really have to think about how a decision in the business is going to affect you personally and vice versa, right?
Yeah, so many individuals, when they start a business, they'll form an LLC. That's typically the go-to.
Yeah.
And when you register your LLC with the IRS is going to instantly say to you, okay, if it's just you, you're going to report the financials on your 1040, your personal tax return. If it's you and a partner, you're going to do a partnership return. So all the net profits are going to flow to you, plus some at the end of the day. And then there's something called an S Corp as well, which I won't get into, but you have to actively apply for an S Corp status. But it does the same thing. All the profits kind of flow to the partners or the owners at the end of the day.
Right.
So how should they flow? You know, should you call them salary, and should you pay SICA and FICA and MICA and all the sort of taxes on those, right?
Right.
Or should they just flow to you as a distribution, a dividend, if you will? And what's the tax effect there? And what does the IRS think you should do, right? The IRS says, well, we like wage earners.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, and so we insist if you need to be earning a market type wage, and then the difference should come to you in distributions. Now, why is that important? Because distributions from an S Corp don't attract self-employment tax, right? So you save tax by just taking distributions from an S Corp. Whereas if you're an employee, you're paying all those, you know, taxes, and then there's an employer match and all sorts of stuff. So not to get kind of too winded about it, but it helps if it's all under one roof, because then we can really dictate what the revenue stream should look like going in and out.
Yeah, and
or what should be called.
And the IRS is onto you if all you're doing is taking distributions. I mean, because this exactly is where you need an expert.
Then you get those nasty notices in the
and they are nasty. And I interrupted you, sorry, but I wanted to make sure we made that point. But let's talk about success story. Maybe one that's illustrative of your great work.
Well, I mentioned earlier that Ionosphere company that I'm kind of fractional CFO on, and that's been a great success. They're still in R&D mode, but they're really looking promising. And I've helped them raise a little bit of extra funding where possible. It's very much in vogue with the VC community, so I've helped them interact with the VC community. We've got hold of their books and started cleaning it up. So most startups, as you probably realize, really happen in a garage setting where the founder is doing the bookkeeping. And the difficulty is when you start attracting external capital and you start moving up the stratosphere to the venture capitalists and the private equity, you need to have better records and more reliable records. And so in this particular instance, we took the bookkeeping in-house. We've really polished up the financials in a good way. And then we've also put the owner on notice about, where the cash flow is, what the cash burn is like, and, when are we going to run out of money?
Right.
So I think it's given him the reins to the business and given him a lot more confidence as to, how he can manage the business, what he can achieve, when it can be achieved, etc. The other success story has been, funny enough, going back to my native South Africa. As you know, John, everyone around the world wants to do business in the United States.
Sure.
Right? This is the home of capitalism. This is where everyone wants to be. The almighty dollar resides here. And so I've had a number of clients, and the number is probably more than one and less than three, that are foreign organizations that are, opening up a branch here in Atlanta in the United States, or doing business here, or outsourcing is also a big deal where they would use some resources in South Africa. In this case, I think it was collections. So they'd have a call center in South Africa doing collections for U.S. companies. And so they needed help to structure that, how they put it together, how they make sure they're compliant in the U.S., compliant internationally, etc. So that's been an interesting exercise, and I think quite successful so far.
Yeah, terrific. Greg Silberman with S.J. Gorowitz and Company. Greg, this has been great. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story and the great work you're doing. We're delighted we could shine a light on that. But let's get to the most important question, which is how folks can get in touch with you, because I can't imagine that we aren't some folks that we've piqued their interest in some of the things you've been talking about.
Yeah, thank you, John. And sure, we'd love to hear from any of the listeners. Certainly would love to chat and see what you got going on. Easy enough, I think, is probably just to reach out on our website. It's sjgorowitz.com, and Gorowitz is Gorowitz, or Z. I forget how to say that.
Z. Yeah, there you go.
sjgorowitz.com.
Terrific. Greg Silberman, S.J. Gorowitz and Company. Greg, thank you so much for, again, coming in. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you. Really had fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, folks, just a couple of quick reminders out there. If you have dysfunction in your back office, you need administrative help, you're swarming in tasks that you really need to hand off to someone else as a business owner to take on. Well, I've got a suggestion for you. The team at Office Angels, they do fantastic work, and I know this myself because I use their services. So call them up, explain what your problem is, and let them help you restore the joy to your life as a business owner by sending an angel in that'll take all that work off your plate and get it done for you. And they operate on an ongoing or as needed basis. So give them a call, 678-528-0500, or go to officeangels.us to learn more. And just a couple of quick thoughts and reminders. I've got a book coming out later this year. It's called The Price and Value Journey, Raising Your Confidence, Your Value, and Your Pricing Using the Generosity Mindset Method. This book is mostly aimed at professional services providers, so if you're interested in that book, you can go to pricevaluejourney.com to learn more. Also, a big thank you to you, our listener. We're coming up on show number 700 for this show, and we've been around for 7+ years, and we've only made it this far, lucky 7 and 700, because of you. You have supported us in this show for a long time, and one of the ways you've done that is by sharing the show. So if you've heard something here that makes you want to share the show, please do that. And also find us on all the social media platforms. We're North Fulton BRX. Continue to follow us there, share there as well, as you help us celebrate business leaders in our community like Greg, who do great work, and that work deserves to be found. And we appreciate you being a part of that. So thank you. So for my guest, Greg Silberman, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.